The gloomy clouds covered the sky, and it was raining non-stop. It seemed like evening, even though it was only noon. Emily used to love this kind of weather. At the orphanage where she had lived since she turned 10, she liked to spend her time in the hallway by the window with the wide sill. It was her personal sanctuary. When the weather was bad, the girl liked to relax there, take a book of fantastic stories, and immerse herself in the magical world of her fantasies. At such times, Emily felt incredibly calm and safe. As in her early childhood, when she went to kindergarten and lived at home with her happy family. Emily's mom was still young and beautiful, and she always had a smile on her face. She worked in a cafe and often brought delicious cream cakes for her little Emily. At work, everyone liked Emily's mom for her cheerful personality. Emily's father worked as a locksmith at the local factory. He was a nice, hard-working guy. They spent their free time like a normal family, going to the movies or to the park. Her father would put little Emily on his shoulders, and she would shout joyfully, holding her breath, embracing him with both arms, even though she knew he would never let her fall. The couple often invited friends who had fun until late, and then leisurely went home singing songs, which caused discontent among their neighbors. Emily could not remember when or why their lives had changed so dramatically. As time went on, the parties lasted longer and longer, and there was more and more alcohol. Some of the guests were no longer able to go home after the noisy parties. Sometimes, the girl had to step over sleeping bodies that emitted the disgusting smell of alcohol. Her mom didn't take much care of herself anymore. She tried to hide the puffiness on her face and began to wear sloppy clothes. Emily's father was often unable to get up or even talk clearly in the morning. Soon the factory management got sick of the fact that the man didn't show up there, and the locksmith was fired, despite his talent and merits. After that, Emily's mother had to provide for the whole family on her own, and the smile and sparkle in her eyes disappeared irrevocably. Emily's father constantly cursed everyone around him, blaming them for his troubles, and kept drinking alcohol. It was painful for the girl to see her parents degenerate, but she could not do anything to change the situation. Now the family was constantly short of money. Cruel classmates bullied the girl because of her cheap clothes. They even called her an alcoholic. The fragile body of Emily's mother, damaged by the alcohol, couldn't withstand such an existence for long. One day, the woman got drunk and never woke up again. Doctors determined the cause of death to be alcohol poisoning. Emily still remembers how she cried at her coffin. The worst part was that there was no one to comfort the child. Her father had become just a stranger lately. After the funeral, he went crazy and never stopped drinking. It was unclear where he got the money for alcohol and cigarettes, but now Emily never saw her father sober. When she would leave for school in the morning, he was still asleep, and when she would come home in the afternoon, he was already drunk. He paid no attention to his daughter. Alcohol turned him into a zombie with a pale face and shaking hands, but that didn't last long either. One day, returning from school, the girl realized something had happened. There was a fire truck and an ambulance outside their building. There was an acrid smell of burning in the air. People were discussing something loudly, pointing their fingers at their window, or rather at the place where it used to be. Now there was a black hole, which looked like a portal to hell. Emily's drunken father had fallen asleep in bed with a cigarette, burned down the apartment, and died in the fire. That's how Emily ended up in the orphanage. The constant noise in the orphanage bothered the shy girl, who had not yet recovered from the death of her parents. A secluded, hidden place by the window helped her to escape the prying eyes of the caretakers and other children. That's when she fell in love with the overcast weather. This condition gave her hope for the future. The overcast weather would sooner or later end, and the sun would shine again. But now, when she was outside, she had a different feeling about such weather. The cold wind was trying to pull off the girl's raincoat. Her shoes had long since gotten soaked and made a disgusting sound when she walked. Emily wandered down the street in the downpour. Passersby were hiding under umbrellas and hurried away from the rain without paying attention to the girl. Emily's hands and knees were freezing and had lost sensitivity. She urgently needed to go indoors to warm up. She saw the bright facade of a supermarket ahead. There she could warm up and dry off. A burst of warm air greeted her at the entrance. Emily stepped inside and walked along the racks, luring shoppers with brightly colored packages of goods. She didn't take the shopping cart. Why would she? She had only 2 banknotes in her pocket. She would have to live on that money for a while until she could figure something out. The baby moved in her belly. She was only 3 months away from giving birth, but she suddenly found herself with no job, no money, no education. Employers didn't want to hire her seeing her big belly. It is understandable. Why would they need an employee who will soon go on maternity leave? In the past, when Emily watched another movie where some girl got into all sorts of trouble, she laughed. She was impressed by the wild imagination of the writers, for she knew that such things don't happen in real life. But at that time, she had no idea that she would become the same girl with a lot of problems. So, where did it all start? Probably, it started with Zoe. The cheerful girl Zoe got into the same orphanage when she was a teenager. Her mother was deprived of parental rights, but the girl didn't miss her. She was more concerned about the lack of freedom in the orphanage. The nimble girl even escaped a couple of times, but she returned every time. She was the exact opposite of Emily, but for some reason, she chose her as a friend. Zoe liked to brag about what a wonderful life full of freedom she used to have. Parties, lots of boyfriends, and gifts from them. She didn't really like her boyfriends. She only liked getting gifts and money from them. Zoe often shared with Emily her dream of becoming a fashion model and making a lot of money. Because fashion models have such a wonderful life. All they have to do is look good and smile, and Zoe knows how to do that. Zoe was sure she was born for this profession, and Emily did not doubt that the sly and pushy Zoe would succeed. Restless Zoe dreamed of leaving this damn orphanage. We have to get out of here. She began to persuade Emily. The sooner the better. It is important to get into modeling business at the age of 12 or 13. Emily didn't dare to escape for a long time. She was afraid to take such a drastic step. But Zoe continued to persuade her. What awaits us here? A pathetic tuition-free college, a non-prestigious education, and a job with a miserable paycheck. But I suggest you become a fashion model. You'll be able to travel all the time. Come on. Say yes. Dreams of a happy future excited the girl. Eventually, Emily gave in, and they ran away from the orphanage. Thus, one day, 2 young naive dreamers came to one of the modeling agencies. Emily was very nervous, expecting that they would only mock them and kick them out. But, surprisingly, the agency staff got interested and started asking questions. Zoe had a bright appearance and personality, and she knew how to show off the best side of herself. She was bold and confident as she walked down the catwalk, almost like a professional model. When they asked her to wear a dress from the latest collection, she took off all her clothes without hesitation and quickly changed into a gorgeous outfit, which made her appearance even more spectacular. Everyone around her immediately nodded approvingly. Some of them even applauded. Modest Emily could not do the same. She mentally scolded herself for running away from the orphanage and for her stupidity. Everyone was looking at the girl evaluatively as if she was some product in a grocery store, and they were loudly discussing her shortcomings. She has a very vibrant appearance, even better than the previous girl. But why is she so stiff in her movements? It's absolutely horrible. Zoe didn't like this comparison, for she believed that her friend was actually much worse than her. She felt envious somewhere deep in her heart. Meanwhile, Emily continued to work down the catwalk. She was slouching, unable to cope with her embarrassment. Finally, they gave her a chance to rest. The tall woman, apparently the head of the agency, stated that if Emily wanted to stay, she would have to work very hard. I see potential in you, but time will tell if you have talent. The girl agreed, but only because she had no choice. She thought she couldn't return to the orphanage. On the one hand, the girl liked beautiful clothes and the catwalk. But on the other hand, she hated to feel like a doll. Zoe immediately made friends with several models and no longer paid any attention to her former friend. 2 days later, Emily worked down the catwalk more confidently, but she still didn't have the inner boldness that the modeling business required. All this time, her friend Zoe has been trying to turn the agency manager, Catherine, against Emily. She kept telling the woman something and apparently managed to convince her that Emily had no talent at all. At the end of the day, Catherine told Emily that she could never become a model, but that she could stay with them as an assistant. Emily agreed. She didn't complain and was even relieved when they finally stopped looking at her judgingly. But the agency supervisor couldn't take his eyes off her. Jack immediately noticed the shy girl with an extraordinary appearance. There were many such girls in the agency, but there was something special about Emily. Some kind of purity and sincerity. Such qualities were uncommon among the arrogant beauties. Passing by her, the supervisor never missed an opportunity to say something nice to her. He showed his affection and protected the girl. He helped Emily get a single room in the dormitory and made sure no one hurt her at work. Emily was embarrassed that a man much older than her was showing her signs of attraction, but she was grateful to him immensely. She had her own room now and could finally enjoy the silence after a hectic day. She thought of Jack more and more often before falling asleep, remembering how he had touched her in the elevator or kissed her hand. She realized that all those gestures made her feel good. She had only 1 day off a week, and on the day off she missed his smile. One day, Jack unexpectedly called her and suggested, "Emily, why don't we go for a walk?" The girl was very excited and agreed without any doubts. When Emily saw Jack outside the work environment, she realized she had fallen in love with him long time. The warmth of his strong hands and the beautiful words he would say caused her heart to flutter tenderly. She had completely immersed herself in this relationship. It seemed that the whole world was created just for the two of them, and there were no obstacles and troubles that could separate them. Even the news that Jack was married didn't make her break up with him. At first, she was shocked, but the man immediately calmed the young girl, saying he hadn't lived with his wife for a long time and he was filing for divorce in a couple of months. Everyone at the agency already knew about their relationship but kept silent. Only Zoe made fun of Emily. She herself was already dating some businessman. As time went on, Jack changed a lot. He made excuses, saying that he was busy and tired. That's why they met less and less often. The man began to avoid talking about their future together, although previously he had promised her endless happiness. When Emily found out she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. She believed that soon Jack would divorce his wife, and they would finally get married. He had told her about it many times, but Jack was shocked by such unexpected news and started communicating with his former lover only officially. The girl tried to talk to him privately and understand what was going on, but he only answered her something rudely. Moreover, Emily noticed that he was now looking at the new model the way he used to look at her. Emily didn't want to believe that Jack had broken up with her. She mentally justified his behavior by his workload, and she tolerated it. But when she saw Jack driving away in his fancy car with a new young model, Emily suddenly realized it was the end. In the morning, she came to Jack's office to talk and find out what was going on between them, but he only rudely kicked her out of the office, and the next day she was fired. Emily was accused of stealing jewelry. She cried, trying to prove her innocence, but the decision had already been made. The girl didn't even doubt that it was Jack who asked to fire her. He simply wanted to get rid of her. When Zoe found out about it, she only grinned. Catherine asked Emily to leave quietly, without police. Obviously, the girl had to move out of the dormitory. Just like that, on a cold, rainy full day, a pregnant girl found herself homeless. She walked into the grocery store to warm up a bit. The guard suspiciously watched the strange customer without a shopping cart, but with a big belly. She had been walking between the aisles for half an hour, but she hadn't picked anything out. The guard couldn't stand it and grumbled menacingly, "Miss, can I help you with your choice?" Emily looked back and stepped away from him in fright. "Oh no, they're going to kick me out of the store now," she thought. The girl walked over to the bread department and picked out the cheapest bun. She didn't want to spend the money, but she was really hungry. The guard didn't take his stern eyes off the strange girl who was slowly eating the bun right at the cash register. She had to move on. But where should she go? The contrast between the warm grocery store and the street seemed even more critical now. She stopped at a couple more small stores on the way, but they all looked at her suspiciously. She had already left the central part of the city and was now wandering down a street with beautiful private houses on it. She had never been to this part of the city before. There were no passers-by at all on the wet street. The girl stopped, unsure of what she should do next. Should she go back and wander the cold streets again? Or should she go forward? Her gaze suddenly stopped on the high wicket in front of the entrance to someone's house. It was ajar as if inviting her to enter. Without realizing what she was doing, Emily walked over and pressed the intercom button. She didn't know what she would say, but she felt this was her only chance for salvation. "Hello." A pleasant male voice responded. "Hello. My name is Emily. May I come in? I have something to talk to you about." She knew she was talking nonsense, and any normal person would be wary of such an attempt to break into their home. But, surprisingly, the front door opened, and a dark-haired tall man showed up on the threshold. Emily noticed a white bandage over his eyes, which hid part of his face. It was difficult to determine the age of the homeowner. "I'm sorry. I'm not going to steal anything from you. Don't worry. It's just that I have nowhere to hide from the downpour. Please let me warm up and dry off a bit." Foreseeing a refusal, she was ready to leave, but the man suddenly said, "Come in. Let's have some tea." He walked to the kitchen, touching the walls to understand where to go. Realizing the man couldn't see anything at all, Emily began to fuss around, trying to make tea. "My name is Oliver. So what happened to you, Emily?" he asked. This unexpected hospitality of the blind man touched the girl's heart. She finally took off her wet jacket and shoes. The hot cup was pleasantly warming her palms. She told everything about herself. How she got to the orphanage, how she escaped from there, about her job, about Jack, and her pregnancy. "So you're expecting a baby?" He suddenly rejoiced. "You are so lucky. I've always dreamed of children. My ex-wife got pregnant shortly after our marriage. I was over the moon, waiting for this baby. But she had a miscarriage. After that, we never managed to have children." There was sadness in his voice. The man was silent for a while, thinking about that painful time. And then he told everything about himself. He owns a small refinery. 2 months ago, an explosion occurred while he was there. A wave of hot chemical vapors burned his face, but his eyes were affected the most. Doctors still don't know if he'll be able to see in the future. After he became disabled, his wife, Chloe, immediately filed for divorce and property division. While Oliver was in the hospital, unable to cope with his depression, his ex-wife managed to get most of the assets to which she was not entitled. Oliver still couldn't understand why Chloe had turned from a kind, sincere girl into a cynical fool who was only interested in money. Busy with his business, he didn't notice that his young wife made friends with the same idlers like her. The purpose of their existence was to maintain the right lifestyle. Gym, beauty salons, diets, and expensive personal development courses. There was nothing else in their lives. Oliver repeatedly suggested that Chloe find a job or start her own business, but she refused. Soon she became absolutely indifferent to both her husband and her household chores. She only did what she wanted to do. Oliver decided to reduce the expenses of his wife, but it made Chloe very angry, and soon the unexpected disability clearly showed what kind of person Chloe really was. The man was left all alone in a huge empty house and sank into depression. He fired all his servants. Only one maid would come once a week to clean the house and do the laundry. Lately, He has eaten only pizza and some convenience food. He listened to music and audiobooks all day long. Time passed monotonously and sadly, and there was no hope for happiness ahead. Emily felt sorry for this poor man. His kindness toward the stranger, whom he could not even see, amazed her. Oliver was silent for a moment. It was clear that he was trying to make some difficult decision. "Emily, I have an offer for you." His words sounded hesitant. "You can stay in my house, but you'll have to become my wife for a while." Emily was indignant. Did all men think of only one thing? "What do you mean?" she asked defiantly, ready to leave the house of this disgusting pervert. "Please don't get me wrong," Oliver hastened to explain. "You'll just pretend to be my wife. I'll explain. I have an important deal soon, but I don't trust my employees. I suspect my ex-wife may have bribed them. She wants to take over my business. I just need someone I can trust." Thank goodness he's not a pervert, Emily thought with relief. "Thank you for the offer. I won't let you down," the girl replied confidently. In gratitude for the temporary place to live, the girl began to take care of the lonely blind man. She cooked for him, read books aloud to him, and helped him with household chores. Now, he could walk outside with her help. Her gentle voice accompanied him everywhere, and her hands supported him. Holding her warm hand, Oliver felt a reciprocal impulse from her side, which gave him peace of mind. Being around this strong man gave Emily a sense of hope too. His presence enveloped her with a warm peacefulness. All troubles and sadness disappeared. Several months passed. There was harmony in the house, but their relationship never crossed friendly boundaries. The day of signing the papers had come. For some reason, Emily was very nervous. Unlike Oliver, she would have to pretend to be his wife in public. Besides, the day before she felt a slight pain in her stomach. They arrived at the meeting a little early. When Emily entered the conference room, she was shocked to see Zoe sitting among the entrepreneurs. Seeing her, Zoe only raised her eyebrows and whispered something to the woman sitting next to her, whom Emily recognized as Oliver's ex-wife. Chloe grinned looking at the pregnant girl and gave some instructions to the man sitting next to her. This stranger invited Emily into the other room for a conversation. "Emily, as far as I know, you're helping Oliver," he muttered. Emily only stared at him in horror, unable to utter a word, and only nodded. "Great. So I was right. I see that you are going to become a mother very soon. I think you need money. A lot of money," the man said, without taking his eyes off her. "Just imagine. You will have your own apartment and a bank account with the money that will be enough for at least 5 years of wealthy life. The only thing you'll have to do is not to voice the clauses in the contract market with a pencil on the side." Emily exhaled and found the strength to answer this unpleasant man. "I will read everything that is printed there," she muttered and walked resolutely into the office. She was trembling with indignation. She was not going to betray the man who had saved and sheltered her, even after such a tempting offer. Oliver, hearing Emily sit down next to him, took her palm under the table and squeezed it firmly. She answered him in the same way. For about an hour, Emily was reading loudly everything written in the papers on the table. Oliver listened, nodding, sometimes asking to reread this or that clause. There were several errors in the contract. Oliver only frowned at the strange wording and stood up, ready to interrupt the negotiations. Those present immediately fussed, explaining it was just a typo. It was quickly corrected and the deal was made. Emily finally breathed a sigh of relief after several hours of tension. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain. Grasping her stomach with her hands, the girl bent down and screamed. "Emily, what happened?" Oliver asked anxiously, trying to find her hand. When he took her hand, she immediately felt the warmth and care, and the pain receded. "I don't know," Emily answered and sighed with relief. "I'm 2 weeks away from delivery. It's probably just a false alarm." But the next moment, another pain attack completely gripped her body and made her shriek. There was no more doubt. Labor had begun. Emily moaned and didn't want to let go of Oliver's hand. The blind man couldn't do anything, so he begged for help from those in the conference room. Please, call an ambulance. Hurry up, and we need to put Emily on the couch. 15 minutes later, an ambulance arrived and took Emily to the hospital. Between contractions, the woman felt a severe lack of something. Only after a while did she realize that she was missing Oliver. An exhausting pain gripped Emily's entire body. Everything seemed to hurt, even her brain. She didn't believe it would ever stop. She could no longer hold back her moans. The medical staff tried to calm the girl down. Be patient, my dear. Soon you'll see your adorable baby. I can't bear this pain any longer. I'm going to die now. Emily screamed loudly. She closed her eyes and didn't want to open them again. She really wanted to fall asleep and never wake up, but the elderly midwife squeezed her shoulder and said firmly, "You can do it. It's something all women go through. Be patient for the sake of your baby." Those words helped Emily come to her senses. After all, it's a woman's mission to give life and prolong the existence of mankind through suffering. Congratulations. It's a girl. Look how adorable she is. The midwife brought the baby closer so Emily could get a closer look at her daughter. The baby with her red face and tiny hands seemed very beautiful to Emily. "Hi." Emily smiled at her. The girl waved her hands and smiled, as if happy that she had finally come into this world. Emily suddenly felt warmth and joy in her soul, and her body felt relaxed. Now she was a mom. Mission accomplished. Emily was lying on a bed in the hospital room. The euphoria had receded, and now her mind was filled with anxious thoughts. Now she was not alone. The responsibility for the baby forced her to think about her future. Deep in her heart, she was afraid to confess to herself that she wished she could return to the house where she had lived happily for almost 3 happy months. However, she remembered that Oliver had hired her to help him make a deal. The job was done. Oliver didn't need her anymore, so Emily didn't know what to do next. A few days later, the doctor cheerfully told Emily, "You and your baby girl are doing fine. Tomorrow, we are discharging you. Tell your husband to arrive at 10 o'clock in the morning." The next morning, an elderly nurse entered the room. "Emily, the baby's father is here to pick you up." Emily could not believe her ears. Did Jack dare to come to the hospital? But what does he want? After everything she'd been through, she didn't want to see or hear that scoundrel. It's better to live in poverty than with such a jerk. The woman got out of bed indignantly. She was going to tell Jack everything she thought about him. Frowning and thinking over the rude phrases, she went down to the first floor. But in the lobby, she saw a blind man with flowers in his hands. Emily could not believe her eyes. "Hello, Oliver," she said excitedly. "Hi, Emily." He held out the flowers to her. "Congratulations. I'm sure your daughter is as beautiful as you are." "Thank you so much," she answered, still not believing that Oliver had not forgotten about her. "Have you already decided on a name for her?" "Amy," the woman replied fondly, inhaling the pleasant scent of the flowers. "What a beautiful name." The man smiled. "So, shall we go home?" Emily held her breath, afraid to scare away her happiness. Did this strong and kind man really want to be with her? Or is this just a dream, and Emily will wake up soon? Oliver, frightened by the girl's silence and not seeing her reaction, said in a serious voice, "I'll be happy to give you my last name. You and Amy." Emily finally realized it wasn't a dream. She heard those cherished words and started crying. "But you haven't even seen me," she whispered, still not believing in the miracle. "I haven't, but I feel like I've known you all my life. You're my destiny. I love you." Emily couldn't control her emotions any longer and kissed Oliver. "I love you too. You are the best man in this world," she whispered in his ear and cried. They stood embracing each other until the nurse grumbled as she walked by, "Are you going to pick up your baby or not?" Emily and Oliver finally released each other from the tight embrace, and the three of them drove home. Oliver spent as much time with the baby as he could, and she was always calm in his arms, as if realizing that he would protect her. But he was tormented by the fact that he couldn't take care of his daughter the way all other fathers did. He realized how limited he was in what he could do. "Emily," he told her one day, "I've decided to undergo surgery. I want to take the risk. I really want to become a normal husband and father. The doctors won't give any guarantee, but I want to try." The woman hugged her husband, then carefully removed the bandage and covered his face with tender kisses. "But if it doesn't work out, don't be upset. I love you anyway," she whispered, snuggling up to her beloved. During the surgery, Emily paced the hospital corridor nervously. Finally, the doctor came out of the operating room and, smiling, patted her on the shoulder. "Everything's fine. Don't worry. We'll remove the sterile bandage tomorrow morning. So let him spend the night here under the doctor's care." Emily exhaled a sigh of relief, but it didn't relieve her nervousness. She wanted to spend the night at the hospital, holding Oliver's hand, but the doctor was against it. Besides, Amy should sleep in her crib at home. So Emily drove home, unable to stop worrying. Oliver was noticeably nervous before the important event. He clenched and unclenched his palms, trying to calm his emotions. Now he's about to find out how the rest of his life will go. The doctor said the surgery was a success, but it was still unclear if Oliver had regained his sight. The man held his breath, listening to the doctor. "Try to open your eyes now," the doctor announced. Oliver hesitated, afraid that he would be disappointed. Then he clenched his fists tightly and raised his trembling eyelids. He saw a bright light. He squinted and tears came to his eyes. After a few seconds, the world around him became brighter and clearer. Oliver saw a tall man in a medical uniform on the right and a young pretty girl with a baby in her arms on the left. Then he heard that familiar voice. "How are you, darling?" Oliver blinked a little to make sure his marvelous vision was real. "I didn't even expect you to be so beautiful." He exhaled and took her hand. His eyesight did not return completely, but even this result was pleasing and inspiring. But there was still one more unfinished thing to do. Oliver decided to punish his ex-wife for betrayal, filed an appeal to the court, and returned the property illegally taken away from him. No lawyer could help Chloe. The law was on her ex-husband's side. Oliver started to work with renewed vigor, and profits began to rise again. One day, Chloe unexpectedly showed up at his office. She burst into his office and brazenly sat down in a leather chair. The woman seductively looked at her ex-husband. She probably prepared for our meeting in advance and purposely went to the beauty salon, Oliver thought, noticing Chloe's perfect hairstyle and makeup. "Hi, sweetie. I'm so glad you've recovered." She interrupted the silence. Oliver suddenly realized that her perfect body and charming voice didn't attract him anymore. On the contrary, he looked at Chloe with disgust. "What do you want?" he asked, indifferently watching her attempts to seduce him. "Why so rude?" "I missed you," she replied. "When I was in the hospital, you didn't miss me much. You didn't even visit once." Chloe was not confused by this sarcastic remark. She was ready for such a conversation. "I was a fool then, but now I realize that I still love you, just like on our honeymoon. Do you remember how happy we were?" Her cynical attempt to manipulate him by talking about the happy moments of their past life had the opposite effect. Oliver only frowned and shook his head sadly. "Chloe, stop it. You left me when I was blind. Don't pretend to love me. You only loved my money." But Chloe moved closer and tried to snuggle up to Oliver. It seemed like her breasts were about to pop out of her dress. "I'm still the same Chloe you loved," the glamorous beauty said in a seductive voice. She tried to wrap her arms around him and kiss him, but Oliver firmly pulled the woman away from him. "Stop this show, please. You betrayed me. You can't change anything anymore." The woman got angry. She had never been rejected like this before, but the hope of getting what she wanted was still lingering in her soul. "Please, give me another chance. Please, darling. I'll prove my love to you," she pleaded, looking faithfully into his eyes. The man only grinned. "Have you ever loved me? I don't remember such a thing." True love. It's different. And I realized it recently. I love another woman. And with her, I learned what mutual lovers. Chloe's gaze instantly turned contemptuous. And she said angrily, "Are you talking about the prostitute? Oliver, come to your senses. It's not even your baby." Oliver couldn't take this anymore. He resolutely stood up and pointed her to the door. "You have no right to talk like that. Don't ever come here again." The woman only grinned and leisurely walked away. Our plan failed. He kicked me out. Chloe complained to her new friend. He said he loves Emily. Zoe reflected. She desperately wanted to ruin her ex-friend's life. "We need to break them up, and I think I know how," she said with a wicked grin. Emily saw a familiar face on the intercom screen and recoiled from the unpleasant sight. "Jack, how did you find me? And what do you want from me?" The man smiled kindly, holding a bouquet of red roses. "Let me in, Emily. We need to talk." The woman hesitated, for her husband was not at home. She then decided to go out to the wicket and to talk there. Jack heard the click of the lock opening and burst into the house, paying no attention to the protests of his former lover. He slipped the flowers into Emily's hands and made himself comfortable on the couch in the living room. "Is that my daughter?" he exclaimed, noticing the baby. This question brought the woman to her senses. "That's not your daughter," she objected firmly. "Oh, really? I've done the mathematics. The timing fits. What do you want?" Jack smiled kindly, stood up, and tried to hug her. "I realized I can't live without you." The woman pushed Jack away from her, and the man collapsed onto the couch and laughed. "Why are you so mean? You used to be so different." Suddenly Oliver showed up in the doorway. He saw smiling Jack, took Amy in his arms, and walked into the other room. The uninvited guest immediately hurried away. Apparently, he had accomplished the task that Zoe had assigned to him. What was he doing here? Oliver asked angrily. The tone of his voice didn't bode well. Emily knew he was jealous, but she'd never seen him like this before. "Honey," he burst into the house, pushing me aside. "I didn't invite him or call him. I swear." She justified herself awkwardly, even though it wasn't her fault. "If you didn't invite him, why was he sitting in my living room?" Oliver got angry. "Oliver, you're yelling at me for no reason. I don't know how he found me." Now there was indignation in her voice. She was sure that Oliver trusted her. But why he didn't believe her now? "Maybe I just came home too early and interrupted you." It was too much. Emily genuinely loves Oliver. But if there's no trust between them, then why would they live together? They didn't talk for the rest of the day. It was the first quarrel in their married life. The morning did not bring any positive changes in their relationship. Emily looked sadly out the window at her husband leaving for work and thought, "No, we can't live like this." Oliver had been thinking about their quarrel all day. Jack's brazen face was flashing before Oliver's eyes. What if their former feelings came back? After all, Emily didn't chase him away. These thoughts made Oliver feel even worse. But how can he find out the truth? Suddenly, the man realized he had cameras in his house. He decided to check out yesterday's footage right now. With trembling fingers, he turned on the video. What would he see now? Another betrayal. But after watching the video, the man couldn't hold back his smile. He was such a fool. Why didn't he believe his beloved woman? He decided to hire security guards to make sure no one else broke into the house. But first, he should immediately apologize. He bought a huge bouquet of white lilies and a cake and rushed home. But when he got home, neither Emily nor Amy were there. She must have packed her belongings and left. Suddenly, Oliver felt the same depression that had plagued him when Chloe had left. But he quickly pulled himself together and decided to call his wife. But Emily's phone was off. Oliver got nervous. He had to find his dear girls. First, Oliver went to the neighbors to ask if they'd seen anything. But they knew nothing. Emily had no friends in this city. But despite this, the man went to the modeling agency where she used to work. but they knew nothing about the girl. He even went to the orphanage where Emily was raised, but they couldn't help him. When he returned to the empty house late at night, the man lay down on the sofa in the living room and closed his eyes. He didn't want to spend the night in the marital bedroom alone. After a sleepless night, a man got up with a headache. Suddenly he got the idea to check out social assistance institutions. One by one, he visited homes for people in difficult life situations. But Emily was nowhere to be found. It was almost midnight, and there was only one such facility left. "Yes, Emily is here," the woman replied, and took Oliver to the room where Emily had spent the night. She was sitting on a narrow bed and rocking little Amy in her arms. Oliver immediately forgot all the beautiful phrases with pleas for forgiveness. He was only able to get on his knees and hug her legs. He remained like that for some time, not daring to look her in the eye. Oliver came to his senses only when she touched him gently. Emily was stroking his head and whispering, "Honey, it's okay. I'm not mad," Oliver uttered. "Emily, my love, forgive me. I'm an idiot. Please, let's go home. I'm begging you." Emily smiled affectionately. Of course, she forgave him. Emily and little Amy waved cheerfully to Oliver, who was leaving for work. The man was calm and happy. But when Oliver arrived at work, he got an unpleasant surprise. Chloe was standing near the security post. The man got nervous, expecting some kind of trick. But Chloe looked different today. There was nothing left of the past glamour and arrogance. "Oliver, I need to talk to you urgently." Her voice was no longer demanding, but rather pleading. "Let's go to the office," he replied briefly. She obediently sat down in the chair and was silent for a moment, not knowing where to begin. "A few days ago, the doctors diagnosed me with a terrible disease. I'm going to die soon." She pulled a piece of paper out of her purse and held it out to her ex-husband. Oliver read it and sighed heavily, not knowing what to say. "I just wanted to ask for your forgiveness. There's something you don't know. When we got married, I had an abortion, and then another one. I didn't want to have children." Oliver was silent, shocked by this confession. So she had been betraying him from the beginning. "Also, I was the one who set up that explosion. I wanted to become a widow. I wanted to get all the property as soon as possible. Now I realize that I sinned, but back then, the lust for wealth and power seized my mind. Please forgive me if you can." These confessions shocked the man. He could not utter a word. The woman only looked at him guiltily, waiting for an answer. Finally, he said, "I'll give you money for treatment, as much as you need, but I will never forgive you. You're a terrible person, a monster in human form." Amy was sleeping quietly. Emily could not take her eyes off her beautiful baby girl. She was growing so fast and learning new skills. The woman sighed and turned on the TV. Oliver came over to the couch and hugged his wife. "Are you watching those fairy tales again?" Emily smiled kindly. "Well, yes, again. I've loved fairy tales since I was a kid. Isn't my life a miracle? After all, I was lucky enough to find myself in the same fairy tale as you." And she kissed her beautiful husband tenderly.